Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Pentester Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Kaitlin O'Neil, a recruiting manager from Bishop Fox. Kaitlin, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well. I'm a little bit nervous because for everyone listening, Caitlin's pre-warned me that she's going to flip some of the questions on me. I'm normally nervous as a host, but I'm super nervous as a host and a guest combined. So there you go.
No, it's going to be easy and painless. I think you have so much insight too. And I was like, let's hear it. Somebody else should ask you these questions.
Yeah, no, thank you, thank you. And look, for everyone listening, me and Kate are going to make it a bit of a, obviously, offensive security orientated, but very much kind of a recruitment episode. Give the listeners do's and don'ts in terms of all kind of things, resume formatting and hiring processes, what not to do, what to do. So we're going to do our very best to help out as much as possible. But Kate, I've done you a little bit of an intro. I could never do it as well as you. If you could tell me and the listeners who you are and what you've been up to.
Awesome. Thanks. First off, I was really excited to hear from you. I've been listening to the podcast. It's really happy to be invited on my imposter syndrome times 100 at even being asked. It's awesome to be here. But about me, so I've been at Bishop Fox for about 5 years as a recruiting manager for about 2 of those. I came up through the ranks as an individual contributor. Before that, I was at Samsung. And before that, I was at Microsoft, where I worked with a lot of early career talent and university recruiting. So I've been recruiting for 8 or 9 years now, which is crazy. But I think, like a lot of people in security in general, my background was not like, I did not come out of high school being like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I have a master's degree in Southeast Asian history.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was going to get a PhD in history, and somewhere along the way, I was like, maybe it would be cool to have a job. And that kind of helped segue into a couple of different things and some trial and error. And I think because there was some trial and error, it helps me be better just looking at the career field more broadly, because I've had a couple careers before I got here. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, cool. A master's degree. I bet your resume writing skills would be awesome.
I hope so. I've made it this far.
Very good. So, Caitlin, I'm sure most people, obviously, me and you are both recruiters, and it's great to have a fellow recruitment professional on the show. Most people are familiar. I'd like to think most people are familiar with what a recruiter does on a day-to-day basis. But can you tell me and the listeners how you feel a recruiter adds value to an organization?
Yeah, I think that I was excited to talk about recruiting a little in general, because I think, especially if you're early career, the recruiter might seem like a gatekeeper. I feel like so much of the language on LinkedIn is they're using an ATS to kick you out for keywords, and you got to get past the recruiter so you can get to the hiring manager. And on the one hand, it's true, like, I have roles where we get 500 applicants and we're hiring one person, and we get 500 applicants in 3 days, and it's nuts. So of course there's a need for a gatekeeper, because we can't have no one person can feasibly interview all of those folks. But I think a recruiter is more than that. I think that, like, recruiters that are good at their job, they're able to understand more broadly the company and the role they're hiring for. They care about the candidates that they work with. I know a lot of recruiters care really deeply about the candidates they hire and the ones that they don't, and they stay in touch with people throughout their career. So I think that recruiters, especially in tech, can bring some of the human to these roles and to this process, and that a recruiter's really in your corner if you're a candidate, especially as you keep moving through the process. I'm a little biased because I work with one company. I only work with Bishop Fox. Like, when I hire somebody, I know their manager really well at this point, usually. Like, I know their manager's like kids and their partner and their life outside of work. So I care really deeply about who's coming in, how it fits. But I don't think that's different for you, even though you work with a lot of companies. What does it look like?
Yeah, sometimes, because some people say to me it's harder being an internal recruiter. Some people say it's harder being agency side. Because I think sometimes if I think when you engage in a candidate, I think it can be easier agency side, because if you've got loads of options, everyone will talk to you because they're like, he's going to have something good for me.
Yeah.
Whereas when you approach them, they know you're approaching them for one thing. So maybe that's, I don't know. I think it can be different. Finding the right clients to work with is a massive thing to me. I think if the communication's right between the client and the agency recruiter, that's when it's just brilliant. I've got some clients where I think I mentioned to you off air. I think it was last week we've had a client and they invited me into their Slack group, and it was just brilliant because feedback was just like that. We made loads of hires. It was great last year, and then I've had other clients in the past, and I've almost stopped sending profiles to certain clients because I don't hear back for 2 weeks. And if the candidate's in pain and I'm not going to hear back for 2 weeks, it's not fair on me and it's not fair on them. So I think kind of communication's like massively important. But it's a tough old job. And there is some, like there is in every industry, I think there's some less than desirable recruiters about. But I think if you've got long-term ones that, like you said, I love representing a candidate for his or her whole career because then it's easier for them and easier for me as well.
Yeah.
So, kind of a bit more of a long-term approach, I think.
No, I love that. I think that's the difference. I think it's easy to feel like you're getting spammed by recruiters, and maybe you are. And obviously there's big gaps in quality, but I do think that at the end of the day, recruiters are there to pave the way in a really positive way. And it's like somebody sitting in your corner and they're working with you and they're negotiating with you and they want to see you succeed. So I think like building good relationships with your recruiters is not a bad thing to do.
No, definitely. I think when you find a good recruiter, just keep him or her on side. And I think as well, because me and you are so specialised and I don't know if you get this, but when I'm talking to pen testers, they're like, oh, thank God, someone that actually understands what we do. And it's nice to hear that. But I think I got taught really early on, probably you're the same, but just get really specialised and niche down because you get to know everyone, don't you?
Yes.
So it's
more
nice.
fun too.
It is, yeah. No, I like it, definitely. So I feel like you're really well qualified to answer this. Did I answer your question, by the way?
Yeah.
You did. Thank you. Just making sure. So I feel like you're massively well qualified to answer this one. But in terms of the ideal profile that kind of you're looking for, what do you love either? Which type of pen test you like approaching, or which type of pen tester do you ideally like to approach you?
Yeah. So I hope that this answer is helpful, but it's a little vague in that I feel like what's ideal shifts, right? So it depends, like you said, especially as like an in-house recruiter, I'm limited by what I'm hiring for, but I'm sure even for you, like it depends on what the business you're working with is looking for. So I might talk to somebody who's really awesome and their early career, but I really need to hire a mid to senior. And then that means I can't move forward with them. So I think sometimes when you're job searching, it's easy to take everything really personally and be like, I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified enough. This is my fault. But you don't always know what's going on behind the scenes in the business. And there's a lot of factors that are outside of your control. So I think that like approaching any search with resilience is really important because it's not all your fault and it's not all in your realm of control. In general, like looking at a pen tester, I really like to see somebody who is pretty actively engaged in the community beyond just showing up to their day job. Like I love to see they're playing around if their early career, I know people have talked about this on the pod, but Hack the Box and Try Hack Me and CTFs and all of those platforms. Maybe they're going to conferences, maybe they're presenting, maybe they're just like engaged. They're putting out their own content on GitHub, or they have a personal blog and they're blogging about things, CVs, or they're blogging about general industry trends. But I really like to see somebody who's actively engaged with the community. That's usually a pretty good sign that they're going to be committed to learning and growth and that they already have a pretty good baseline from which to start. So those things are important. And then a lot of pen testers are consultants. I hire for Bishop Fox. We are a consultancy. We hire pen testers with pretty much every skill you can imagine. We have such a wide range of clients and projects, but consultants need to have strong interpersonal skills, time management skills. We have fantastic client-facing project managers, but having a little of your own project management skills is important. So I think like focusing on the technical, obviously you need that and that's a barrier to entry, but also being aware of how you present yourself with all of those softer skills, because we will say no to people who are technically awesome if the soft skills don't check out. But what have you seen?
Yeah, just to pick you up on that communication point, I keep harping on about this because I knew it was important, but I think it's increasing in importance all the time. I think gone are the days where you can be amazing at hacking, put your hoodie up and get a job anywhere. Like
Yeah.
clients just aren't interested in that anymore.
No.
But yeah, in terms of what I look for, I still have an 8-point like check system that I go through now. So I go through cultural fit. I'll go through obviously skill set, whether it's web app, mobile, cloud infrastructure, if it's full chain red team work. I know that's something you guys over at Bishop Fox do. I'll look at motivation to move. I'll look at retention fit. So if they have been what we call as recruiters jumpy, then we need to consider that. Also, I look at companies that have been in at the past. I've had clients before where they have certain, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to, but I have clients where they want them from certain companies because they know that they're good.
Yep.
I've even been issued lists before, believe it or not.
Yep. Me too. Me too.
So that's the mistake, is that communication. Also, one thing I look into as well is, are they actually bought into, like, are they moving just for a raise, or are they moving because they're actually bought into your mission? Because if they're moving just for a raise, this time next year when someone else offers them another bump on their salary, they're probably just going to leave again. And long term, that doesn't bode well for, say, my client or you. And long term, it doesn't look good for me either. So I looked, why are they actually moving? And then the last thing I look, which you mentioned again as well, is just that passion. What are they doing outside of work? Because if they're up there with the best this year, but they're chilling out of hours, this time next year, with how quick the industry moves, they're probably not going to be the best. So they're the main kind of eight things I look at. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the work you do? Because you're doing chain red team stuff, which I know everyone would love to hear about. But yeah, can you tell us all the types of roles within hacking that you recruit for?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is challenging, we have a handful of people who I'd say are really specialized, but I think one of the hard things about being a pen tester is a lot of times you still have to be a pinch hitter, be able to contribute beyond just the thing you're the most specialized in. So that's why I know I work with really talented people, because a lot of them can flex and cover a couple of things at really high levels. We definitely, like, web app is always a skill that is good to have. Yes, the demand high. I tell everybody, maybe you started out your career in network and you have great education, but being able to build on that and move to web app, the world is your oyster. Mobile, we definitely have an uptick there. We're seeing more hardware and product security. Super fun. Sometimes, like some of the red teaming where you need to be physically on site, it can be a little different and a little limiting in where we hire, because if you're handling like very large hardware and you have to go on site, that's a thing. If we're sending hardware to you, we have to take into account where you are and the security. So cloud is another thing we're seeing a really big uptick in, and that's something we've really looked to upskill people internally in. We have a lot of people internally who are like, I want to get better at this. We have a couple of experts, and we've been investing really heavily in mentorship, because I still think, like, when I went to the market to look for somebody at the senior level in cloud, it was challenging to find somebody who was a pen tester with that really high level of cloud. Either like they were a pen tester and the gap was cloud, or they're really strong with cloud and the gap was the pen testing. That was what I found on the market, and definitely a good place to position yourself if you're trying to decide where to position yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I did, for everyone listening, I did a full, it's not released yet, I've done a full episode on pen testing the cloud, because what you're saying is mirrored across my client base, and like the cloud stuff's massive. The hardware hacking stuff, by the way, do you find, I know a few, but I don't know, do you find them quite hard to find, the hardware hacking guys? Or
I do find them hard to find, and I do think it varies greatly, right? I've talked to some people who had a little bit of exposure to that, but that's not necessarily enough to come in at the senior level. Some of the people I know who've gotten good at it have done it partially on their own and through tinkering and through going to like labs within their community. So I think that there might not always be a ton of those hands-on projects, but it's definitely an area where you can build your own foundation too. You don't have to have a company spoon feed it to you. I think that some of the people I know who are good at it are passionate about it. They've been pursuing it in their free time, and then they ramp up.
Yeah, they are. The reason I ask is I've got clients who hire pen testers themselves, but they just use me for the hardware stuff. So, and I do feel it, but it is like doubly hard as filling a normal pen testing role. Like it's hard. I was talking to a hardware guy this week, and he literally had a pallet turn up at his house because he's got his own lab and he's doing it remotely. So he had a pallet from this UPS guy turn up at his door. So I think his neighbours were wondering what was going on. But the hardware guys, they love it. The hardware guys, it's a niche within a niche kind of thing, isn't it? But
cool. And some of the hacks are really cool. And I know people have talked about IoT before on the pod, but like we've seen things that you would not think necessarily, or companies aren't thinking of the being vulnerable through like their toilet paper dispenser that is smart. So like the hardware hacks and that IoT it can be really fun because I do think it can let you get on site. Sometimes the vulnerabilities can be really exciting, and there is sometimes a pretty broad attack surface.
Yeah, no, there is. Resume formatting we're going to move on to. So I know we were speaking about this last week. I've seen so many different things and I've had so much different feedback from people as to what works, what doesn't. What's your advice when it comes to formatting a resume?
Yeah. Everyone's going to be like, wow, so boring. From hardware hacking to resume formatting. They're going to be like, what a letdown.
Do you know what, though, Kaitlin? Do you know what? I don't know about you, but like, a lot of pen testers do ask me this. They don't know. So it might be, but I think they want to
I tease. Sometimes in comparison to my coworkers, my job is so boring. But at the same time, you can be a really badass hardware hacker, and that might not come across if your resume is so poor that I can't parse that out. So I think that it is important. I think I say this a lot, and present company excluded, but as a rule of thumb, I think a lot of recruiters are dumb, which is terrible. But I think that there's a lot of recruiters out there who maybe they're hiring for a single security role and they mostly hire software engineers and product and sales, and they have one IT role that pops up for a pen tester, and they're trying to like fill that role in addition to all these others. So I think you have to know who your first audience is, and your initial audience might not be someone like you or me who's in this space 24/7. And so making sure your resume is really clear, making sure you get to the point that like TLDR, too long, didn't read. Is it brief? Is it clear? Is it well formatted? Like people need white space to be able to process. And if you are like me and you have jobs with 500 applicants and somebody submits a 10-page resume, that is not something I'm like, oh, great, I'm so stoked. Let me roll up my sleeves to read all 10 pages. Like, I want you to feed it to me. I want to be able to scroll really quickly and just glance through it in 10 seconds and be like, oh, yes, there's good stuff here. I'm incentivized to spend more than 10 seconds and actually read it all. Because the data, like the eye scanning data shows that recruiters on average only spend it's like 9 seconds per resume, which is nuts. But I think it's true in that like my initial pass is going to be really quick, and you need to make it clear enough, concise enough, templated well enough for me to be like, oh yes, this is something I want to dig into.
Listen, thanks for that, Kaitlin. And I think the key is, if you don't know who you're sending your resume to, I think it's so difficult. Like now, everyone listening knows you're getting 500 apps?
I will get 500 apps on jobs.
Okay, so you've got 500 apps to go to. So you're not going to want to receive a 2 or 3 page resume with no white space, because it's just going to be like, oh. Whereas if it's a small pen testing company, say, I don't know, in New York with 10 people and they're making one hire a year, and it's the founder reading it and he's used to being really heavy on code review or something, maybe he's cool with it. So I think you've got to know your audience really. And I think that's why we get so much conflicting information. I do think it really depends on the company. I think if I was to have a kind of broad brush approach, I think someone like you, it's obvious that you're going to be getting a lot of applicants, well known in the market, things like that. I think if it's maybe a smaller company, maybe you can afford to be a little bit more long-winded, but at the same time, everyone's busy, aren't they? So I know the general rule I've heard is 1 page, but I just hear so many people saying conflicting things.
I think it's
Yeah.
fine to go up to 2. I think no matter where you're at in your career, I'm going to be scratching my chin if you need to go over 2. Like, you must have accomplished quite a lot. I also think like accomplishments do start to age out. So maybe the job I had 10 years ago that wasn't related to recruiting, that's fallen off my resume now because I want to keep it to what's really important, where I want your eye to go. I don't want you to be distracted by things that don't really tell the story of who I am today and the jobs I'm going after today. And to be fair, when I'm job searching, I do update my resume for almost every job I apply for that I'm serious for, and I tailor it to the posting. And I know that's labor intensive. And if you're really on the job search, that might not be feasible. But I've heard people using ChatGPT to help pull from job posts and then help them with the bullets. And I wouldn't take what it puts out. I would definitely edit what it puts out. But I think it's working smarter, not harder. Really take into account the job description and how that relates to the resume you're putting out there. I think that's important.
Would you like seeing a LinkedIn profile pinged across with the resume?
Yes, I
Yeah,
actually
separately.
think sometimes if your resume is chaotic and stressful, I will probably click on that LinkedIn profile link because I know how LinkedIn will force you to format.
Yeah.
And I hope then, oh, maybe I'll get better information from this LinkedIn profile than this chaotic resume.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I really do. I know the average is 8 seconds, and sometimes I can see what I need to see in 8 seconds, right? If I'm hiring a principal and you're a new grad, I'm probably going to reject you quickly unless I have a new grad role I can reroute you into. But for the most part, even the 10-page resume, I'll sit down and be annoyed, but I will read through all of it and try to figure out if it's a fit or not. But you don't necessarily want your recruiter annoyed. You want your recruiter to be happy to engage with you. So I think making it brief and clear and action oriented. I think women especially will say, I was a part of a team that did, when really they were like the team leader. And it doesn't necessarily matter in this resume, in this moment that you call out the team. I would rather you were like really active and were like, instead of even saying I, like cut the I out and just be like drove revenue growth or tested and then list the types of applications you were working with. I think being like clear and action oriented and cutting out some of that wishy-washiness will also help your chances.
Yeah, no, definitely. So don't use words that don't need to be there. Just keep it really short and sweet. For my clients that are really busy, by the way, I do a separate cover note for them and they just have to read a few lines so they know straight away.
Yes.
And the LinkedIn profile, I've got it with one client and again, last year, lots and lots of hiring with them. And he's a New Yorker. He's typical New Yorker, very straight talking, which I liked, by the way.
Me too.
And he just basically said, Tom, listen, I'm not looking at resumes. I just want the LinkedIn profile. So that kind of says it all. But I think going back to what you said about doing stuff in the community, if someone goes on a LinkedIn profile and they're a YouTube content creator, I say they're doing stuff for the community. I know not everyone can speak at events, but if they can speak at events, the more they're doing in the community, I just think, I keep saying it on the pod, but I think it just makes the resume 3D. It's just, I say, and the thing is, you're interested, if you're watching the YouTube channel and doing this, and as a recruiter, I think you just bought in straight away.
Yeah,
So,
I love that idea of making the resume 3D. I think that as there's so much noise out there on what to do with a resume, I think that's at the heart of it, is like making it clear and concise and bringing who you are into it and staying away from some of the jargon or just copy and pasting from the job description. But truly, what have you accomplished? What do you care about? What are you involved in? Capturing that in the resume so that I can get a picture of who you are. Like, that's what I can get some traction on when I show it to my hiring manager or to the interview team. That's what I can drum up some enthusiasm around.
yeah, no, definitely. So when you're showing it to hiring manager, say head of pen testing or something like that, they just want it to the point. I think I'm answering it for you, but is that what they want
Well,
internally at your side?
one of my favorite hiring managers kills me. He's always, oh yeah, if the resume is really bad, I know they're a good tester because they didn't put any time into their resume. And I'm like, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But if you got blind spots and you don't know your resume is bad, there might be someone out there who's cheering for you.
Okay. So in a nutshell, then we're going to say keep your LinkedIn profile up to date, presume it's going to be looked at like a resume. Keep it down, don't use unnecessary words. And the more you can do in the community, the better.
Yeah. And you and I can't always find people if they don't have a decent LinkedIn. So I think as the world changes, more and more recruiters are trying to find you versus hoping you come to them with your resume in hand. So I think making sure you have some sort of professional online presence, especially in this community. I know that's contentious in that some people want the smallest digital footprint possible, and I understand that, and they want their privacy, and I understand that too. But I think if you're really actively job searching, having some sort of curated online presence that recruiters can find, you're better off when the recruiter comes to you. I think that's always a leg up, is when they're seeking you out and asking you to come into the process, you have their attention, and that's the place you want to be in.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Kaitlin. So, interview tips or common interview questions to be aware of. What do you think is the best way to prepare for an interview?
Yeah. So, the way I prepare for interviews personally, and I think it shows when candidates do this too, I try to think of examples from my career that I want to talk about. So I think about my big wins. I think about the challenging projects. I think about those times when I really had to work across departments. I try to rack my brain. I try to make sure I'm pulling from different companies, different types of examples, different technologies. And I try to have all of those in my back pocket. So whatever questions the recruiter asks or the interviewers ask, I already have in my mind a couple of examples that I can probably fit to the questions they're asking. And a lot of good interviewers, they're going to want to go beyond just hypothetical. They're probably not going to just be like quizzing you. So they're going to want to know what you've actually done and how you approached it. So I think having those like behavioral interview question examples ready to go, then you'll be prepared for whatever they throw at you, hopefully. What do you do? Yeah, how do you approach people?
Okay, so I've got a bit of a story here. I do a little bit in Holland, but I basically just do the American market now.
Yeah.
But originally, I used to do the UK market, and there was a large financial auditor in the UK. This candidate was really good. He was through to a final. I think it was a Friday afternoon in London, Kaitlin. It was sunny. I was like, this is great. Client's happy, candidate's happy. And this guy was really good, senior pen tester. And I said, yeah, it's in the bag. Just relax. It's fine. And it was the worst thing I could. And this guy was genuinely very good. And he did what I told him to. And he just relaxed. And it was Friday afternoon. And he got a couple of technical questions thrown at him. And it just caught him off guard. And he didn't get the offer. He didn't get the job. And I was like, oh, this is my fault. And so after that, ever since that day, I've always been like, just really, the phrase I use is just keep your guard up, stay on your A game, especially towards the end of a process. This was quite a long process. They were a very large financial auditor, so it was, I think, 4 or 5 stages. Everyone had really liked him. And he just let his guard down too early. He thought he had it in the bag. Yeah. And so ever since then, I've always said, just always expect technical questions. If it turns out not to be so, I think just always prepare for a technical test. Don't ever let your guard down. But yeah, I learned the hard way many years ago. So yeah, that's my tip. Just stay on point.
That is disappointing. I can see that going down. And that's where if being in-house and being able to sometimes be like, listen, I don't really have a horse in this game. I just want to see us hire the right person. And I'll go to hiring managers and be like, I think you're making a mistake. I understand maybe this interview didn't go as planned, but we have 3 or 4 other interviews that were awesome. So what went off the rails? What was the problem? Is that just a single thing that happened this day? Is it somebody who's nervous? Is it somebody who doesn't interview well? Or is it truly like an indicator of a personality trait or a skill gap that isn't going to fit with the org and with the role? So that's another place where like you want the recruiter in your corner. And I think being a good partner through the process to your recruiter too, sometimes they might be able to get in there and fight for you. Yeah, but it's harder agency. Your job is harder when it comes to influencing like that.
It is. I think, again, it just depends on the communication and the relationships. There's a really large tech company in California. They've got about 100 people on their internal team. Cool. But they do still use me for some senior pen testing hires. They hire loads of pen testers themselves, but we partner together on kind of management slash pen tester roles. And my point of contact there, she's great, and I can really, really lean on her. The relationship's really good. So I think I think having that strong relationship with an internal recruiter is really good, recruiter to recruiter. But yeah, I suppose it is getting that feedback is obviously a great thing as well, because it means moving forward you can immensely improve. But I think it's just communication, relationship, but it's easier said than done. It's just finding the right people, isn't it?
The other thing I see with some of our interviewers at Bishop Fox that I always tell people to be prepared for, like our CEO in particular, is really interesting to interview with because he's super engaged and he really listens, but he's also terrifying to interview with because he's really quiet and he asks a lot of follow-up questions. So I also warn people, whatever you bring into the interview, be prepared for somebody to be like, but why did you do it that way? In retrospect, would you have done something differently? Did you think about approaching it from this angle? And I think being ready for somebody to really dig in. So anything you bring to the table in an interview, be prepared to have somebody really take you to the mat and ask a lot of follow-up questions. And if you're not prepared for that, then maybe just don't bring it into the interview. Just don't have that be the thing you talk about or the example, if you can help it.
Yeah, I think the thing is with you guys at Bishop Fox, like there is so much you've done in the community, and like literally there's a lot. I'm quite an obsessive guy, so naturally I'll just be like, but that's what you should be doing. And in terms of kind of asking questions and stuff like that, if you've read the ins and outs of everything you guys have done, there will definitely be some questions there that you've got. So I think it doesn't take too long either. And also, it's really interesting. I think to do that bit of research first and check someone out and show off your reconnaissance skills.
Yeah, I think we're ready at that recruiter interview stage. I think sometimes people are like, oh, I'll invest my time after I talk to the recruiter. And I understand if we're all busy, we all have things. I've never gone into a recruiter interview without having done my research on the company, because what's the point of even talking to the recruiter if you don't have a sense of this is a company, like this is what they do, I'm in alignment with this mission, or I'm in alignment with this work, and it seems like a place I would enjoy. And if you've done that research, then chances are there's some things you want to know as a candidate. And I think it's really important that you advocate for yourself by asking those things.
Yeah, I'd say on the flip side, so if you haven't done your research, I think for a pen tester, for any pen testers listening, think how annoyed it is when you get hit up for a sock roll when you're a pen tester from a recruiter that doesn't know what they're doing, or a pen tester or a recruiter that says something about your profile and they blatantly haven't looked at your profile. I think that's the equivalent, because that kind of thing I know from speaking to candidates, it's really annoying. So I think, just it's common courtesy, and it shows that you care and conscientious and stuff like that. Yeah. Cool.
And how I think if you don't do your research and then you get in there and it's really cool and you blew it because you didn't do your research, like I've seen that happening, and that's disappointing. So I think you do yourself a service by taking 10 minutes, right? I don't expect you to know the company better than I know the company, but it's great if you know what we do. That's like a good baseline. If you can go beyond that, extra credit points.
Yeah, no, definitely. Cool. So I know you would have seen loads and loads of hackers, obviously, over the years. What do you think makes the difference between someone that's okay and just absolutely flipping off the charts?
Yeah, this one's come up on the pod, and I know a lot of people have, what they've said really echoed with me too, and that there is a certain level of like obsession that sets people apart. I think the hackers that are really like off the charts, like they're obsessed. Like it is not work for them. They do not sign off at 5 p.m. They're like waking up at 7:30 and logging on, and they're logging off at 9:30, and their whole day is like engaged with this content. And I know that is not an attainable bar for everyone. So I'm not saying that this is the only way, because it's a lot. I think really being in that top 1% isn't necessarily healthy. I think a lot of people I know in that top 1%, they're amazing at hacking and they're amazing at this one thing, but they might be like ignoring some other aspects of
Yeah.
life. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is what you should aspire to, but I think that there's something to be said about really the people who set themselves apart in the field. I think they truly love it. I think the people I know in this field who are really amazing, they're not checking a box to get a job that pays well. They're doing it because they want to be here. They want to solve these problems. They want to learn more. They want to go deeper. And when I talk to people, I think that's probably the number one thing that I look for is, do I feel like they're really hungry? Because I think the best testers I know are really hungry, whatever stage of their career they're in.
Yeah, I think if it's just about the money, you're in the wrong game.
Yeah.
It's like I say, it's I think that level of passion is important. I think as well another thing, because I know obviously burnout is a real thing, and I think if people are feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and I did a post about it this week about burnout because I've been hitting it really hard lately. But and I said it in the post not because I have to, not because I'm forced to, because I genuinely am enjoying it at the minute. But I do have other times where I do feel stressed and overwhelmed, and I do stop, and I think that's important. I think the other thing as well that people underestimate is the compound effect of small differences. So if you got up an hour before work 3 days a week for the next 3 years, I think that would make a massive difference to where you are in
Yeah.
your career in 3 years' time. And I think people really underestimate that. And for some people, it might be an hour a day, 1 day a week. For some people, it might be an hour a day, 3, 4, 5, whatever
Yeah.
fits in with your life. But I think the compound effect, I know Eric, who we spoke about
Yeah.
off air, he talked about doing 4 hours on a Sunday because that kind of worked for
It's a
him.
lot of
And
time.
obviously, yes, yeah, that's what fitted for him. I don't know if he got up early on a Sunday morning or whatever
Yeah.
he did, but he did that for an extended period of time, and it seemed to make a big difference. But I think
Yeah.
compound effect. There's a great book, by the way, and I know I'm going to ask you this question later on about your favourite book, but there's a great book called Slight Edge by Jeff Osland. That's all about just little bits of extra and the compound effect over time.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
do believe that. And I do think I was talking to somebody who at Bishop Fox who's pretty well regarded and regarded in the community too. And he was like, I think one of the things that can be hard, especially starting out in security or really wherever you're at, is like you look at these people who are just elite hackers and you're like, oh my gosh, like it must be that they're super talented or they're super smart or they're super just gifted at hacking. And he's what you might be missing is that like it took me 20 years to get there. That I started this when I was 14 and I've been doing this for 20 years and I've been like eating and sleeping and breathing it for 20 years and that's why I am at the place I am in my career and I made these choices because I really do love it. You don't have to do it the same way. It's a lot of it is just about investing the time and it can be hard and there's a lot of reasons not to invest the time and especially if you don't love it you're going to find excuses to not invest the time but at the end of the day like a lot of that difference is just are you willing to put in the time and the effort and the work
yeah,
to set
yeah,
yourself apart.
definitely. And look, I think you hit the nail on the head at the start where you said the top 1% have been literally ridiculously obsessed 12, 13, 15-hour days. For some people that will work, but it won't work for everyone. And I think
It
whatever
won't.
you do, it's got to be sustainable because there's no point being a great pen tester for 5 years, burning out, and then never doing it again.
Yeah.
It's got to be sustainable. And if 12-hour days, 4 days a week with a 8-hour day on a Friday is sustainable, great. But if it's just a couple of hours extra each week outside of work, then great. I think whatever works for you as an individual.
And I maintain, even if you love it, most of the people I know who like love it, they don't seem to love it forever, which is really like sad and sobering. But I feel like everybody hits these peaks and valleys in their careers. And even if it was something that was your whole life and it was your whole passion, you're probably going to hit places where suddenly you're like, I'm bored. Like, I'm bored of this, or I'm not engaged the way I was. Like, most of the pen testers I know are actually really dynamic people. And just as intense as they are about hacking, they're also really intense about like jujitsu or something crazy, right? I think that understanding that there's going to be peaks and valleys and things are going to shift and most people reinvent themselves throughout their career is also part of it and being willing to like lean into that instead of fighting against it. I think that there's something to be said about listening to your intuition as your career shifts too.
Yeah, I think another thing as well. I think as well for anyone that does feel if they're falling out of love with it, I think that's another reason to give back to the community, because
Yes.
the more you can give back, it's such a great, even like doing this pod and learning
Mhm.
stuff off you and other I mean, it's for me, I've been a recruiter for a while, but it has really revitalized me, and it's added like an extra layer of fun and feel good factor, sense of
Yeah.
purpose, sense of giving back. So I think as much as yes, it makes your resume three-dimensional. Yes, it enhances your career. Yes, it boosts your profile, but it helps other people, and I think it adds an extra dynamic to the extra dimensions to the job as well. If you're getting a bit burnt out, or a bit if the work's repetitive or something like that, I think all the more reason to perhaps give back a bit more.
Yes,
So,
I love that.
mm,
I
mm.
think that is the part about being able to listen to yourself too, and seeing when you're hitting walls and being able to like lean on your community, because it might seem everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid and they don't hit these walls, but I think a lot of people hit walls with burnout, with just like maybe feeling the slump of not having the same drive or passion. And when you lean into the community, you might find new challenges and new avenues that are exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Kelly. I've missed a question out that I was going to ask you before. What's the best pen tester interview you've ever done, and why? What can we learn from it?
Yeah. Oof, this one was tough. I've been thinking around this one a lot. I think one thing that people may or may not realize is I have days when I will run like 10 interviews in one day, right? There's days where I'm pretty much every hour is an interview. And if I'm not in interviews, I'm taking meetings. My team is pinging me, hiring managers are pinging me. And so a lot of things blend together when you're talking to that many
Yeah.
people. And I'm really focused on the individual, and that's why I'm in the job. I love engaging with people. That's how I got here. That's why I want to be here. But things can blend. So I think that when an interview really stands out and I remember the candidate, it's that they helped me reconnect with my passion and my joy at work, because they love what they're doing so much that it's contagious. And
Mm.
it doesn't, I don't want to say like the only people who are good at their job here, like they love it so much, but I think they're able to talk about it in a way that you can see they still have like joy and enthusiasm and a sense of purpose in their work. Those folks really stand out. You might be explaining something really technical to me, but you're not doing it in a way that's, oh, do you want me to not do this since you're a recruiter? Because you're probably not going to get it. People do that to me all the time, and rude. And I think somebody who's really good as a consultant, it shouldn't matter if I am fresh off the street and I have very little knowledge, or if I'm really knowledgeable. They should be able to convey that story to me at my level, and they should be able to figure out what my level is as they work through the story. I think people who are really good, like they have interesting examples, they have interesting exploits to share. They can bring it to a level where I can engage with them. And then I also know they can ramp it up and be more technical if they're talking to one of my senior managers. But I think like when you bring your passion and your joy, you give somebody your attention, like you aren't just hearing, you're listening. It's a conversation. Like that's awesome for any role. And it just warms my cold, dead recruiter heart when somebody can bring that to my day of 10 interviews.
Yeah, it's infectious. That energy is
Yeah.
infectious, isn't it? Yeah, no, it is. I get that. And do you know what? You do get that a lot when you're recruiting pen testers, because
Yes.
there's a lot of people out there that are very passionate, and it does rub off on you. And I get energized off that.
And it
Um,
happens at all levels. Like that's one of my favorite things about hiring interns is I think sometimes they wear their hearts on their sleeves a little more. Like they're early in their career and they're really excited to be here. But I talk to mids and I talk to seniors and I talk to leaders, and it doesn't mean you have to be like an extrovert. I don't think you have to be an extrovert to bring some of that. What do you like about your work? Why do you want a new job? Why are you here? I think if you can answer those questions in a way that's genuine and bring that energy to the interview, we're all looking for that, whether we're really consciously thinking about how we're looking for it or not. Like people really respond to that.
yeah, no, they will, definitely. I know we spoke about communication skills before. Now, I know they're massively important. It's been echoed across episode after episode. What do you think the best ways are? If you're listening to this now and you're thinking, great, hear what Kaitlin's saying, but my communication skills are rubbish and I just don't know how to improve them, what tips would you have for the listeners?
Yeah, I think this one is definitely challenging. I think there's something to be said about brute forcing it a little bit. So
Mm.
it might not be your favorite part of the day, but I think challenging yourselves. If you always order delivery, maybe go to the restaurant and pick it up and talk to the person who's taking your order, preparing your food, just small talk. But I think pushing yourself a little bit out of your bubble to maybe interact with people, even getting out there and going to like a DEF CON or a 2600 group, or maybe you're talking to people who love the same things you do, but you're going out to those groups, you're engaging in those conversations. I think you're probably not going to get better at your verbal communication skills if you are like all your communication is happening through like a subreddit or like a Discord server. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just to pick up on your last point, it's like if you're never doing it, it's, if I don't know, say you were amazing at, I don't know, say you're awesome at web apps, but like you just never did one for years, you'd probably find when you went back to it, it'd be pretty rubbish. And I think
Yeah.
if you're not doing something on a regular basis, you tend not to be
Mhm.
very good at it. And I think if I used a phrase on a post this week, but it's just getting comfortable feeling uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and that is when we're growing. But I think it's like anything, just not being scared of failure. I think I mentioned to you off air, and I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning, but Tim, the CEO of Red Series, you did an
Mhm.
hour. I mentioned to you last week. You did an hour presentation, and for everyone listening, and he said this on the pod too. He won't mind me saying it. He finished it in 15 minutes because he was so nervous. He rushed it so much. He said it was absolutely awful. And I've had him on the pod a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Tim's communication skills are great now. Like you'd
Mhm.
think he is. He does loads of stuff in the community. He does something called Offensive Wednesdays to help everyone's career progression. He's always online. So he's a pro now, but he didn't start off like that. In his own words, he was miles off where he needed to be. So I think it's just like anything. You've got to start somewhere. I sometimes think when I say something like public speaking on stage, people probably think, "Oh God," but I can. I think, like you said, it might be walking down to the restaurant. It might be just having a conversation with someone. Just start somewhere. It might even be doing a post on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I don't mean a video. I don't mean it. It
Mhm.
might just be writing an actual post because. And I know we talked about this before. When I first did my post, I was so worried about what people. And I think I said to you before, some people were a bit negative about my stuff at
Yeah.
first, and now no one says anything. But
Yep.
I think you've got to. I think you've just got to start, haven't you?
I think
Yeah.
so too. And that's the hardest part. And I feel I'm extroverted. It comes naturally to me. I think so. I feel a little bit. It's if somebody super technical was like, you just do it, Caitlin. I'd be like, it's really hard. Like, I'm
Code it. Just
trying.
code it.
Yeah. And that's where I think there's awesome mentorship programs out there. A lot of companies have them. A lot of organizations have mentorship programs. So it's like maybe you start by working with a mentor and you're working one-on-one with someone and you're engaging in small conversations and maybe they have different ideas than we do and there's a little bit of accountability because you have a mentor. I think that with communication in particular, you're going to need to rely on the people around you in the community and find people who draw you out and make you want to speak. And what is it that gets you there?
Yeah, no, let's say it's an absolutely vital part of the job. Unless you're going to do bug bounty on a freelance basis
Yeah.
all day, every day. If you want to be a professional pen tester that's really good, that communication piece has got to be addressed. So
Yeah.
but yeah, no, you're giving us, yeah, Kevin.
And find you a recruiter who makes you come out of your shell. I think that
Mm.
there's a lot of different recruiters out there. I think especially if you have a chance to choose who you're working with, like an agency, work with somebody who you want to have that conversation with because they help draw you out. That's part of my job is you might be nervous. I'm expecting you to be nervous. You might be really nervous. There's might be a lot of things going on. And like my job as the recruiter is to be able to get the information we both need. And that might mean I rephrase the questions 5 different times. That might mean I scale it back and we start with some softballs and then we ramp up from there. And I think that if interviewing is really scary, maybe thinking about the partners you're working with and trying to work with people who help bring out the things that are really good. And then talk to them as you prepare to go into the next interviews and get some feedback and get some pointers. And I think recruiters are people and they want to
Mm.
help and they want to share what they love with you. Don't be afraid to take them up on it.
Yeah, we love talking. Just ring me and Caitlin.
I do. My, like, pride and joy is when I'm working with somebody who maybe isn't super easy technically commuting or they're
Yeah,
nervous,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
get to put them at ease, and then all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they have so many skills and such great
yeah.
knowledge and so much to share," and I'm glad that I can help set the stage so they can bring that to the forefront.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, for anyone listening, if you're not nervous before an interview, if someone says to me they're not nervous for an interview, I'm concerned. You
Yeah.
should, if you're nervous, that's
Mhm.
good. Like you should be.
If you're not nervous, you're probably interviewing for the wrong job because
Exactly. Yeah.
you're not invested.
Yeah. No, definitely. Great, Kelly. Thank you for that. I know you've done a lot of work building out different programs to help people transition into the commercial world recruitment programs. So for anyone listening that is at that phase or they're new to pen testing or coming in, what can we learn from those programs? How did they help? Any kind of general learnings that you took from them that could be helpful for the listeners?
Yeah. So, what I learned at Microsoft was that they had decades of doing this. They had lots of data, lots of research. And what they found is that the people who they hired through their university recruiting programs tended to promote faster. They tended to stay at the company longer. They had really outsized contributions that they were able to make. So, I think if you're somebody who's more senior, you're in leadership, and it feels like taking on juniors is going to be a nuisance, maybe put a pin in that thought and think more long term, because I really think when we talk about the cybersecurity shortage, and this has been said on the pod, like the shortage isn't across the board. The shortage is for seniors, but we have a lot of really awesome talent, a lot of really diverse talent, like more diverse than the industry as a whole. And I think if we're really going to make a more inclusive industry, we have to look at that junior talent and we have to invest in developing them. And what I've seen at Bishop Fox is you bring somebody on and there's people where in 2-3 years, it's amazing what they can do, what they can contribute with some strong like mentorship, leadership, and some opportunities to really shine. I think that if you're junior, be resilient. I think that's a huge piece of it is build your own. If you don't have an internship, then still take that time you would have dedicated to an internship and focus it on building your own skills and experience through all of the platforms and tools that are available to you. If you're senior and maybe you are feeling stale in your career, I think there's nothing more invigorating than working with somebody early career who's, oh my God, I want to be you. What a crazy thing. What a compliment. I've heard it and I've loved like working and mentoring. And I think the same is true. I think that juniors are good for the whole org and that everybody can get a little bit more engaged when the program is managed well. And it's how we solve for diversity. I think it's how we solve for the talent shortage and how we build companies that can last.
Definitely. Thanks, Kaitlin. I'm making notes. I'm making notes while you're speaking there because I really want to get some point. I don't want the pod to be all about juniors, but I do
Yeah.
want to help them a lot
Yes.
because I do think since remote working as well, I don't know what
Yeah.
you think, but I think since remote working, I think we need stuff like what Whitney and you are doing now, but I think we need that community more than ever. Or I just
Yeah.
worry that there's a lot of good juniors out there that won't reach their full potential.
Yeah.
I think the giving back thing, like you say, it's really rewarding if you're a senior. I think another thing that it does is it reinforces the information you already know and keeps it really solid. So I told you I'm doing this recruitment training course at the
Yeah.
minute, and this guy that's doing it, he's got his own agency and he's now set up this recruitment training thing. The length this guy's gone to get mentors is unbelievable. So he's basically researched where his mentor's at in his or her career. He's gone and researched a book that will be relevant for their career progression.
Cool.
He's then got it off Amazon, wrote a personal note in it, and then sent it to them. And that's how he sourced his mentors. And wow, talk about not just thinking about it me, like he's really
Yeah.
thinking about it from their side. And he's managed to get some great mentors. Some of them are actually quite famous. So he's like really taking it to the next level. So that's probably a good tip for people as well. I
Yeah.
think remembering mentors a two-way thing as well. It can't just be take all the time. Try and think, which might be hard, but try and think what you could offer them. Maybe if it's in a work environment, maybe if you're running some scans, you can stay late and do them for them
Yeah.
in return for mentorship. I think there'll always be something you can do. And then I think as well, you see what it's like here then. Like the senior guys, of course it's hard to get there because they have, I think in general, they have a great time
Mm-hmm.
and they're paid well. And no matter what state, like the economy's not in a great state now, but I know firsthand the demand for them is still massive. So,
Yeah.
like, of course it's going to be hard. Like,
Yeah.
hacking all day, having great fun, having like probably one of the best careers you could ever have. If anyone thinks that's going to happen like in a year or 6 months and it's going to be easy, no, that's not real life.
Yeah. That's what, isn't it Warren Buffett who says nobody wants to get rich slow. Everybody wants everything like quick. Like we don't, the patience, it's hard to be patient. And I think I understand I'm impatient and it's frustrating. We all want stuff to happen, but I think you're right. I think it's like, what are you giving your energy to every day? How are you thinking long term, but acting short term to get you there? And I think that's part of why people on the pod have talked about like seeing seniors after 2 years. And yes, some people are truly that good, but also some of it is the inflation that comes with trying to keep up with everybody's drive to see growth every year and see progress every year and see a raise every year. And that's just not always realistic. And I think sometimes that's where it's not just about progressing in that one way where you're getting a promotion every year. It's also progressing like more holistically. Maybe the communication skills are the things that get you the promotion, maybe not. Like maybe you're investing in leadership skills or you're investing in business skills, even if that isn't the thing you need today to get to the next step in your career, because that's what helps you stay engaged and that's what helps you grow as a person. I think that can get lost too. It's not just what are the boxes I need to check to get promoted. It's how can I think more broadly to find joy and fulfillment in my career, but also down the road, like building a foundation and a base that'll keep me going for 20 years.
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. And look, I think as a junior, if you're finding it tough, I think, listen, I know firsthand, and I know you do as well, Kaitlin, like any junior listening has got such an exciting journey and chapters
Yeah.
ahead of it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. It's not going to happen as quick as you think. There's
Yeah.
probably going to be multiple setbacks along the way, but you're going to have so
Yeah.
much fun. And when you get there, it's going to be amazing. And guess what? If you just got there straight away, it'd be boring anyway. It's got to be.
Yeah.
It's got to be challenging. That's like the fun bit.
The first 4 years of my career were so bumpy, right? And I think sometimes like you can look at me now and be like, oh wow, she's had this stability, 5 years, lots of growth, lucky her. And that's true. But like the first couple of years, like I was in a contract job making $18 an hour with no benefits, living in Seattle. Like there was a lot of things I did because I was like, this is tough and I'm really going to have to eat it, but I'm getting good experience and I'm learning and I'm investing in myself and I can make ends meet for a year or so that I can get this opportunity and this experience. And I'm not saying to sell yourself short, but I think your expectation is wrong if you think you're going to come out the gate and immediately get a six-figure offer, because that might not be the case. You might have to be a little bit more creative and invest in yourself and grow a little bit to get to the point where that comes to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Wicked. We've done our junior help. Definitely.
We did.
Okay, I was gonna say book, but I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna say which book or podcast has
Yeah.
had the biggest positive impact on your career and why.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of my answers have been pretty soft, right? I think you talk to a lot of technical people. They're really in the technical. My answers are a little more soft skills, but I found a lot of success and I found that's resonated a lot with the super technical people that I work with. And I don't think that's just because I'm a recruiter. So one of the leaders that I really like is I listen to and I read a lot by Brene Brown. So I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's out of Texas and she's like a social researcher. She talks about work, but she also talks about life. And a lot of what she talks about is like courage, vulnerability, worthiness. And I think these things like come into the workplace. I think that like good leaders are able to bring some of their own strengths and weaknesses and fears to the workplace. They can build relationships that are honest, because it creates a whole culture where the people around them can also deal with adversity. They can be honest with their coworkers and with their manager. And because they can do that, they can seek support and work together to face challenges. She talks a lot about like compassion and authenticity. And I think that on the one hand, in the workplace, we're really focused on like the tactical, but I think how we interact with each other is how we build something to last. And at the end of the day, you want to enjoy the people you work with. I think we do screen for that a little bit when we're interviewing. We want to build these well-rounded teams, but nobody wants to work with a jerk. So I think learning how you can show up, how you can listen, how you can build trusting relationships, how you can be honest with the people around you, I think those skills are really important too.
Yeah, massively. Like, I'm too old not to work with people I don't like anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not doing it.
And like your career will suffer if people don't like working with you. And
Definitely.
I think maybe you're the senior sales guy and you're bringing in a ton of business, but if you're a nightmare for the legal team to work with and you're a nightmare for the pen testers to work with, like all of a sudden your ability to get that business connected to the people who make it happen is going to be impacted, and you won't be as good as your job. So I think that there's something to be said about really listening to everybody around you, and in coming to interactions with some empathy. I think it's easy to be like, oh, my job is hard because I have to do XYZ. And you forget that, oh my gosh, the recruiting team is way short staffed and they're working outsized hours. And like the legal team is trying, they have somebody who's sick and they're trying. If you bring empathy to the role, it's never going to work against you.
No, yeah. And everyone in this industry is just so busy as well. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, just as well, just to pick up on that point about, I know you said, oh, it's relating to soft skills more and if technical people are listening, but I think people that Brene Brown you just mentioned there, I'm not familiar with her, but I'm imagining very good at articulating herself, communication skills strong, written skills strong.
Mhm.
So these are all things that we can relate back to pen
Yeah.
testing, because I know Dave Collins, who's done a history degree, previous episode, he said it really helped his writing skills, his report writing skills, reading a high standard of literature. So
Yeah.
if you're listening to someone that can communicate well, write well, I think there are self-development gains to be made there. So I think
Yeah.
it can relate to the technical stuff as well. Okay, cool. I've got one more question. I promised you I was going to keep you an hour. I've kept you an hour and 10, so thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So, biggest mistake that people make in interviews? What's the biggest mistakes you've seen pen testers make in interviews over the years?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I see people make is being so focused. It's an interview, right? So you're supposed to be focused on yourself, but they're so focused on themselves that it's not a conversation. I'm not trying usually to just grill you and like down the check sheet and take my notes. I'm trying to have a conversation. I want to get to know who you are, where you're at in your career, how it fits with where we are as a company, what we are looking for. So I think if you come in and on that first question, you give me a 15-minute long answer when we have 30 minutes set aside for a phone screen, that's not a good sign. It doesn't show good like awareness. It doesn't show good like active listening and conversation skills. A lot of stuff is missing. So I think the biggest mistake I see people make is they come in and they're so focused on, oh my God, I got to show you XYZ and all these things that are great about me that they forget to keep it a conversation. And they forget some of the humility. I think that humility goes a long way. Never sell yourself short or settle for less than what you really deserve. But sometimes I got people who come in with not a ton of experience and they're like, listen, I am God's gift of pen testing, and you, recruiter, you are lucky to have me. And I'm like, okay, let me schedule you for an interview with one of our seniors and my senior will eat them alive. And I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, bring the humility. Let's work together. Let me be on your team. Let us like strategize together on how we're going to approach the interview process. And yeah, I think be careful. There's always somebody in this industry who's smarter than you. So I think remembering that and bringing the humility it's good.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, I think so. Do you know, okay, I've had it on both sides. I think sometimes I've seen it on the client side where head of pen testers probably in the wrong, and I've seen it on the candidate side as well. So I just
Yeah.
think, let's say everyone needs to actually maybe show a bit of humility and just be nice.
It's so simple, and I feel like it can sound trite, but it's true. I don't want to put anybody in interviews if I think they're going to be a jerk. Like, I've pulled people, whether they're technically strong or not, because they're just not treating candidates with kindness. And I'm like, oh, that's not who we are. And you need to take a step back, and I'll escalate it to their manager. But for the most part, like, my interviewers are really smart, lovely, genuine people, super smart and technical, but they can engage in these conversations with genuine curiosity. So I think like bringing your curiosity to the table with each conversation is important, and knowing that hopefully you're going to learn something and maybe you'll be able to show something off and teach something too. Yeah, it's a two-way street.
Yeah, it is. It is. Cool. Kaitlin, we've been an hour and 15. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, or are we about done, or what do you think?
You were awesome, and I'm glad we could get some of your insight. I will send you a link that hopefully we can drop at the bottom of the page. But one of
Yeah.
my coworkers, Matt Twells, is amazing, and he's been putting together really detailed posts for a pretty wide range of like hiring topics, and it's called
Oh, wicked.
Hacking Hired and Hacking Hiring, and it's been great. I've been occasionally hopping in and helping him out, but I'll send the link for Hacking the Hiring Process so that you can drop it in. And we talked about resumes for a couple minutes. He spends a 15-minute read, super step by step, with examples, with templates, with all that stuff. So hopefully that resource will be helpful for folks.
That sounds great. And I presume he's kind of all over LinkedIn and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Yes, I
Wicked.
will send it, and you can definitely
Yes, we'll do
find
that.
him too.
We'll do that. Kaitlin, thanks for your time, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.